Hey boys, I'm here to tell you about a sexy new offering from Joe's Shrimp Shack. And it's for a limited time only. Oh my God. Now until January 31st, you can get free shrimp bath water with your order and still get 15% off everything in the store by using promo code BATHWATER at checkout. joesshrimpshack.com. It's getting steamy in here.
One last thing before we start the podcast, I'd like to ask you, my listeners, for story submissions. We started Story Time series because you guys asked us for different stories for our hobbies because you loved our off-topic stories during the podcast, and it's been a very successful bit. We're on Storytime 4 was the last episode, but the next Storytime that we want to do, we want to read your stories. So if you have a silly fish story or some experience that even lightly has to do with the hobby, please submit your submissions to the Aquarium Guys email address. Go to aquariumguyspodcast.com. In the bottom of the website, you'll find our email, our telephone number to send a text message or leave a voicemail. We'll take YouTube submissions. We'll take any type of submission you want to send us, and if we like yours the best, not only will we show it on air, but we may send you a great prize. Send in those stories, and let's kick that podcast.
Welcome to the Aquarium Guys podcast with your hosts, Jim Colby and Rob Zolson.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Jimmy, you are in such a good mood. If I didn't know better, I'd say you got to kick a midget.
I did not get to kick a midget, but that's what I want for Christmas.
I don't know why that's a catchphrase for you, but it makes you smile even more.
I told you why I wanted the midget, but I can't say on this podcast because it's too dirty.
Why? Because you wouldn't give me those midget wrestling tickets that you went to without me? Anyways, back on topic
midgets
here.
are people too, Jim.
I just always wanted the midget because everything looks bigger in their hand. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm Rob Zolson.
Hey, I'm Jim Colby.
And I'm Adam El-Nashar.
Hey, Adam's here.
So we have wonderful guests from Maryland that have decided to come and join us on their vacation. Dilly. Cheers to you guys. We have Alyssa and Kapil from Alyssa's Seahorse Savvy. Hopefully I covered that correctly.
You did. Good job.
Got it. Thank you.
I thought they bailed already.
Wonderful. I'm normally bad with names. I mean, if you listen to the podcast,
No, you are bad with names.
I'm horrible with names. It took me 5 times. I finally got Kapil's name knocked down.
Yeah, we're hoping.
That's a special one.
Well, I'm special.
Are you special, Kapil?
I mean, you're on the podcast. Clearly you're special. Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. We are super excited. There is really nobody else better to talk to about seahorses than you guys. And trust me, I've done my homework. I have reached out to research because I know nothing about seahorses. I'm not going to lie to you. I know that you should not put a penny in the tank. I know that the dudes are the ones that get to.
Adam, tell our guest what happened when you put pennies in a.
Let's make fun of us
put
first.
pennies in the tank.
What happened?
Okay,
Recap.
Okay, so I used to have a retail pet store, and I had a pair of seahorses, and they were a bonded mated pair, and the male had a pouch full of babies, and I wasn't going to sell them because the male had a pouch of babies. And this was like, I don't even know.
A long time ago.
Yeah, I was like 15 years ago now.
In the land before time.
This guy was pissed. He wanted to buy my seahorses, and I'm like, I'm not selling you the seahorses. It was like to the end of my shop day. I closed at 6, and I was there arguing with him. And anyways, long story short, I come in the next morning, and my seahorses are dead because there's the little bastard threw pennies in my tank.
And that's back when pennies were actually made out of copper.
Yes.
Well, that was a long time ago.
I remember.
Well, it was only 82.
So
I was pissed.
That's another sad story from Adam.
So regardless, I know very little about seahorses. So I had to come from the complete outside and research who would be the best person to talk to, because we do get a lot of questions about seahorses,
a lot of people.
Especially since Adam had that story that was so ever popular. So again, happy to have you both on finally. And before we interview with you guys about your business and expertise in seahorses, we do have a couple questions. And please, Alyssa, Kapil, please join in if you have anything to add to it or just make fun of us.
Or if we're wrong, tell us we're wrong.
I mean, that too. And
then the interview will be over.
First question was on our Facebook page. Daniel put, okay, I need Jim or Adam's help. Rob's might know too. Right. So we understand how things are classified.
A vote of confidence already towards you.
A vote of confidence. I'm looking for, I'm not going to pronounce it. I'm not going to lie to you. I know it as the Indonesian super dwarf fish. That is the common name.
Never heard of it.
Tiny little dot of almost like a small scissor rasbora, but like a little color.
Okay.
They're a blip. He says, they're the smallest, he puts on here, the smallest fish in the world. I don't know if that's accurate at all. I know it's probably the smallest fish, full grown in aquarium hobby. Definitely tiny. But he says, I cannot find them online or local. So I'm asking your help for the guys' knowledge. Help an avid listener out. I'm based in Seattle. So we had some people message on the Facebook page trying to help out. Honestly, I went out looking because I've seen these on lists rarely on Seagrass before COVID. It was just sporadically. Maybe they'll have it for a week and then they're gone. There's some other wholesalers that have offered it rarely from some of our international lists, but I have yet to see it in a long time. And I'm pretty sure COVID's going to keep that wrapped up to bread and butter fish for most of the suppliers. So I think your best bet is trying to find some of these people that really work well at oddball fish. The Wet Spot, I believe that's in Washington.
That was going to be my recommendation.
Yeah, they do a good job because they have a lot of weird oddball stuff, and they pride themselves in oddball stuff, and I know that that's a reputable place. Honestly, this is an open forum. If you're listening, you know of some Indonesian super dwarf fish. Message the podcast. We will happily talk about it in the next podcast and let the people know where they can get this obscure fish.
I think our best bet would be that maybe somebody personally has some and are willing to let some go. So maybe we can make that love connection for you.
Heck there. Yeah. Some guy sitting there in the tank full of them. He knows that no one else has them. It's like, $50. And you're like, done. Cash. Here you go.
There we go. And then we get a 10% finder's fee. It's just what we normally do.
Just buy a hoodie. That's all we have.
There we go.
So do you guys at the Seahorse Savvy do anything besides seahorses?
We do seahorse friendly tank mates. We don't breed them. We do corals and we do some inverts. We do have pet freshwater tanks and stuff, but we do not sell freshwater.
I'm trying to stop myself from questions because immediately I go to what's seahorse friendly. But we're going to get to that. I'm going to pause myself. I'm going to be a good boy, and we're going to do the interview later.
Wow, that's the first you've ever stopped talking.
I'm going to be a good boy.
Adam goes, yeah.
Well, you guys are being mean to Robs.
Yeah. Well, guess what? Stuck at your stuffy.
Well, that's it. You're just happy because you actually got some Metamucil after your McRib runs.
He doesn't need Metamucil because of the McRib.
No, I do not. I actually need to eat sawdust just to slow things down after eating McRibs.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. It helps tremendously.
Just a little bit of cotton swabbing?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
What else you got?
We have some text messages. So, hey, guys, a breeding fish question. Do cherry shrimp eat fish eggs? I'm preparing a 20-gallon aquarium to breed bumblebee autosynclus and want to eliminate any threats to the eggs. Thanks.
I would definitely not have cherry shrimp in there with them.
No.
So let's put it this way.
Bumblebee autos too. Geez, that's difficult.
Out of a totem pole of all things freshwater, cherry shrimp are the lowest of my list. But know that all eggs are delicious superfood that every fish will eat. I mean, honestly, any fish, any shrimp, they will go after them. Now, how much damage can a bunch of cherry shrimp do to a batch of eggs? Maybe they won't kill them all, but they'll certainly go after them.
Well, even if they get the outside of them, take that protective coating off of them, you're going to ruin a lot of eggs.
100%.
I would just do a species-specific tank and just do those autosynclus in there alone. So if you do get lucky and you get some eggs, that you'll have success.
I have a friend in upstate New York that breeds all sorts of shrimp. In the same tank, he breeds his bristlenose plecos, and he seems to have more than enough varieties of bristlenose plecos. But I agree with you on most of the fish, but cherry shrimp might eat their eggs.
Yeah, I have. I'm looking at it actually right across the room here from the podcast studio. I'm looking at a 90-gallon square that I have, and I'm probably sitting on 2,000 babies at this moment because I have like 3-4 batches. There's another batch I found just for you, Jimmy, last night.
I hate you so much.
And the big thing is the adults protect them. I have all kinds of shrimp, all kinds of egg predators in there. And because they're in eggs, the adults protect them so well with bristlenose.
Plus, they're in a cave.
Right.
And so with those being in a cave, it's very hard for the shrimp to get in there because they're very protective and stuff. So you have somebody guarding the eggs.
It's actually hard to get the adults to stop getting out of the cave and go feed after you strip a cave.
So, yeah, I'm not even familiar how autocinkless breed. Does anybody know how to autocinkless breed?
As far as I've understood, I thought that they always laid eggs on the glass.
I think they breed similar to Corys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they will stick their eggs to the glass. So
There you go.
Yeah.
So that would be hard for them to protect. So yeah, I would definitely probably just skip the cherry shrimp.
That's what we call open
And as far as
season.
I know, they don't protect.
No.
Farewellas will, and bristlenoses will, but I don't think autos do, probably because they lay so many that they just don't.
Well, they're lazy too.
Okay,
Yeah, that too.
just tell them all how you feel.
Is this the part where we play the theme from Jeopardy?
Right?
Holy crap. Do you have a stroke over there?
Nope. Next one actually got already answered. So we're on top of the game, Jim.
Wow. It is Christmas, so we all want to go out caroling later on.
It is. Speaking of which, have you decided if you want to do insult caroling with me this year?
Insult caroling?
Right.
You saw what I did the last time we were out in November, and people had their Christmas lights up before Thanksgiving. I stopped and booed at people's houses.
It was the best. We went out to eat, and you're driving along, you and your wife, and me and my wife are in the back seat, and we're having a good old time because it's like, wow, we get to go to one meal in this whole COVID disaster. So we go out, and you guys stop at a stoplight and roll down your windows and start just yelling, boo, boo. And like, what is going on? I'm looking in all directions. And then Jimmy's like, no, look at those assholes. And he points over to a house, Christmas decorated with lights. He's like, it's not even Thanksgiving yet. Boo! So that's what we did the whole way. Every house that we saw, we all rolled our windows down and booed at them.
There was some drinking involved too.
It was a good time. So, Jimmy, you have any news before we get into the interview?
I've got nothing. I'm just really excited. We're recording this on the Monday before Christmas. I want to thank everybody for a wonderful year. We're kind of coming to the end of the year very shortly, and this podcast has just been a blessing to us, especially. We've got several thousand people that listen to us every week, and this just becomes more popular, and it's way beyond our dreams. And for that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to listening and stuff. And if you want some new stuff for us to talk about, go ahead and send it to us, and we will see if we can find that particular professional person to answer your questions, or else we'll make it up.
And if you want to join these sessions live, again, we record these to produce in the podcast, but we do only have it just available live. There's no post recordings afterwards. You can come join us at aquariumguyspodcast.com. Be part of the studio audience. On the bottom of the site, you'll find Discord, but even that's filling, and you can find us on twitch.tv/aquariumguys.
Oh, Twitch with a T.
Yeah, kind of like what you do after
14
the
shots
hangover kicks in.
14 shots of tequila, yeah.
There you go. Well, also, the other news that you didn't say, Jimmy.
What's that?
We got our pillows in.
We did. We got some very nice merch, and we were impressed. And we're not just because we're selling this stuff. We actually ordered some pillows in, some T-shirts in, and the quality is fantastic. I'm so happy with this new merchandise.
We assumed that the pillows were going to be like that T-shirt material where you get that like rubber plasticky crap they print on a shirt and then it cracks off later. No, it's like completely woven into the fabric. It was definitely a pleasant surprise. So now I have pillows. You have pillows.
I have pillows.
And even Adam's going to be getting pillows when we send his.
That's right.
Right, Adam?
Yes.
It's pillow time. So what we're saying is go to Aquarium Guys podcast website. We have merch that helps keeps the lights on. And do a pillow fight for us.
Naked.
Oh,
do a pillow fight with us. Get all your girlfriends and
No. Our show is mostly guys, Jim.
No. Okay, no more yeg before the podcast.
Let's skip that part and not do the pillow fight. But we actually have a hoodie here that we needed to sign. Somebody said they want us to sign it, And so it'll be our first hoodie that we've ever signed legally and that we're asked to sign.
Yeah, we were asked to sign. We signed a lot of things, but it's more like the, speeding violation when you were in traffic, Jimmy.
Speeding violations, stay away from my house violations, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Right.
But anyway,
training orders you don't need to sign.
No, you don't.
But I kind of want to be the Sheldon of Big Bang Theory, where we have all these restraining orders from high-end people, like Leonard Nimoy from Spock or, from Star Trek. And
I'm not allowing you to have as much TV time as you've been getting.
That's a lot. So anyway, if you want something signed, we'd be happy to do that for you at no charge. But if you wanted to donate a case of beer, I do like beer. Even a 12-pack. I'd go for a 6-pack. It is the holiday season.
I'm seriously cutting off an eggnog.
There we go.
That's what it is.
All right.
Eggnog.
Let's get on to this.
All right. Well, to dive into the interview, we always ask certain introductory questions. But first off, right, you guys have been very busy, right? You guys have the seahorssavvy.com is the listing if you guys want to see this. Tell us, number one, a little bit about yourselves, just as an introductory, so we can get to know you both, and how long you've been working the business.
Well, my name's Alyssa, and we just celebrated our 6th year in business. Before that, I worked in coral aquaculture, and then started Seahorse Savvy while I was still doing coral aquaculture, and then branched off from there. And I've been doing it full time for about 4 years now. And yep.
Wonderful. How about you, Kapil?
I started in the hobby very young. When I was 3, my dad joined the Southwest Michigan Aquarium Society, and I grew up in there. And I actually started keeping seahorses long before Alyssa did, but she's much smarter than I am. And she actually made a business out of it. Mine were just cool dorm props.
So you're just riding her coattails.
Pretty much.
He likes to remind me he's been doing it longer than me, though. It's because he's older.
Not that.
A lot older.
A lot older? What's a lot older?
I mean, I think I'm 5 years younger than she is.
Is that true?
We don't really know my birthday, but she claims
he celebrates his 25th birthday quite a few times.
I've done it 11 times in a row. So.
I feel like you're getting.
He's not that old, but it gets him going, so we remind him of his age.
I feel like you're like that guy who had the birthday on leap year, and it took him to like age 60 before he could actually legally drink.
I'll tell you a quick story. My mom and dad had the same birthday the same year. And I lost my mom back in 12, and I lost my dad here in 18. But every time that we had to have the tombstone redone, they remember they have the start date and the end date, and the start dates for both of them are the same day. And I found out from my dad, I was always told that my mom was about 10, 12 hours older than my dad. And on my dad's deathbed, he told me, he said, your mom lied about that. I'm older, like by 6 hours. And
Does
stuff.
that shatter your existence?
Yeah, I did. My mom lied to me, and I can't believe it.
It was all ruined.
She also told me I was cute, but that was probably the first lie.
So, I guess the next question to go with this is how do you guys meet and do business together?
Well, I've kept a lot of different fish. I stopped keeping seahorses for a while, and when I was in grad school, I was working at an aquarium shop, and somebody brought in a couple of seahorses, and nobody really bought them. They were wild caught seahorses, and I kind of felt like ignited to keep them again. So I got the pair, and then I wanted more, and I started looking online, and I found Alyssa, and we became friends, and I got more and more seahorses again. And long story short, she convinced me to move here and help her with the seahorse business.
And 6 years later, now it's all worthwhile, right?
Well, I came in about a year and a half ago. So, again, I'm riding her coattails.
So it's been a fun year and a half. You got there just to acclimate before COVID. So you got locked in.
Yes.
What did you ask, Jimmy?
So where are you guys based out of? Where's your warehouse? Are you working out of your basement, back of a car, down by the river? Where are you guys working at?
We have 2 hatchery buildings, one food stock, One is for the nursery grow out and the stock that's available for sale. The property is located on private land. It's close by to our house. We're located in the eastern shore of Maryland, so we're near Ocean City, Salisbury, kind of in that region. What was the other question?
Your last four and your social security number.
No.
Wait, no, there we go.
Oh, so honest. We got to edit that out, Scrap. We always ask every person on the podcast, what got you started into this wonderful hobby?
My dad kept aquariums. And so when I was born, we had a lot of aquariums. And when we moved to Michigan when I was a kid, we joined an aquarium society, and I became passionate.
And I got my first saltwater aquarium in high school. It wasn't very pretty. I've learned a lot since then. And then I went to college at Salisbury University, which is our closest college to here. And I interned at the coral aquaculture facility I ended up working at, and got a lot more into it from there. Got my first tank, and I just kind of, as far as the Seahorses, got a pair, and it just kind of all went from there.
What made you want to go into business, Alyssa?
I was just interested in raising the Seahorses, and I tried a batch and was actually pretty successful with my first batch. And working at the coral aquaculture facility, they offered to resell them, and they sold really well, and we produced good product, and I really enjoy working with them. And we just kept at it and learned more and worked out the tweaks, and it ended up turning into a business. I didn't expect it to, but it did, and I'm happy it did.
I have so many questions about the start of the business. So when you thought, yes, these are selling, what was the first thought that you're going to sell them online? You're going to sell them in person? You're going to sell them at trade shows? How did that first business step work for you?
I wanted to sell them online because that's how we were selling at the other coral aquaculture facility. So I was used to that market and, shipping and everything like that. I learned a lot from them, and I've always just kind of stuck with that. Breeding them, it's kind of hard to travel, so we don't go to a lot of trade shows, but we have gone to some.
To get more in questions of Seahorses, initially, again, we're talking about shipping. I always think fish shipping is one of the most delicate procedures for certain fish that you have to go through different heat packs, all kinds of stuff. But then you have to think about the extra steps. What does it take past a normal fish being shipped to ship a seahorse? I think, number one, they have to hold on to something at least. What does it take?
They're not too much different than shipping a lot of other saltwater fish. They're in an insulated box with a heat pack, of course, at this time of year. We do just put like an airline tubing in there for them to hold on to. They don't always have to hitch, but they do enjoy, hitching to something when they want to rest. They ship super well. And other than that, it's not anything super special.
So what extremes can you go to when you're shipping? Up here in Minnesota right now, today it's 10 degrees above zero. At what point do you just kind of shut it down where it's just too cold to ship or too hot?
If it's the single digits, we'll ask people if we can ship it as a hold for pickup. That way it doesn't have to go out in the truck. And that helps out a lot. As long as it's above single digits, we'll ship. They're estuary fish, and they're used to a pretty big range of temperatures, so they do handle getting cool pretty easily. It's more so in the summertime. We don't want them getting too hot, but of course we just pack with a ice pack. So, like I said, they can handle a pretty wide range of temperature. They're not too sensitive with shipping.
So what's your preferred method of shipping out? Do you like FedEx, UPS, Santa's reindeer? I don't know. What do you use?
We primarily use UPS priority overnight. We do have the option where we can ship FedEx, and in some areas FedEx is better for people and vice versa. Some areas the UPS is better, so we kind of take a look at that as well. But we primarily do use UPS for shipping, priority overnight.
And that's usually a priority overnight product. What's an average box cost for somebody you're shipping across the country to? I know a lot of people are going to be asking that, because that's the first question is how much is going to cost me for shipping?
But this is all coming up due to COVID. We had an episode about this, talking about different costs and how everything's escalating. So at the moment, we have people just trying to get a feel for different markets, and we feel that yours definitely has a unique taste. So just a little background.
So shipping, we charge a flat rate of $40 for shipping, unless you're in Hawaii, and then you sort of pay whatever the published rate for Hawaii is, and Hawaii does require a permit. But for the most
I was gonna
continental
say-
US, it's $40 flat rate.
See, that's not a bad price at all. How big of a box and how many can you ship in a box? That's gonna be the next question somebody's gonna ask.
We can ship a bunch in a box. We have all different box sizes, so it doesn't matter how many they get. As long as it fits in one box, it's the same shipping.
Wonderful. Well, now for more care. So, what are the best parameters that you have luck with seahorses? Again, I coming from the outside, I'm completely blank canvas on understanding seahorses.
So we recommend a minimum of a 30-gallon aquarium, and for any additional pair that you want, we recommend an additional 15 gallons. So if you wanted to keep, 4 seahorses, 2 pairs, we would recommend like a 45-gallon aquarium. Now, like with any aquariums, if you want to have a less of a stocking density, that helps a lot with your stability. I think the one thing people don't realize about seahorses, and if you have a lot of freshwater people in the thing, they're dirtier than goldfish are. Part of the tank size also sort of requires on what kind of filtration that you're using. We have some customers that just use hang on the back filters. We have other customers that, have sumps and protein skimmers. So if you're going to have a sump and protein skimmer, it's going to be a lot easier to do higher densities. If you're going to just have hang on the back filtration, it might be better to have a little bit lower density. So, you kind of got to play it by ear in that regards. But, generally we recommend, a minimum of 30 gallons and 15 for every additional pair. Temperature wise, seahorses, even some of the more tropical species sort of shift, they move sort of laterally based on the temperature. So we recommend keeping them around like 72 degrees plus or minus. If it's a little hotter, it doesn't hurt. But if you're in a situation where your room that you're keeping the tank in isn't well temperature controlled, you may need a chiller. So, you had a question?
I was going to say, you said that there's a plus or minus there. How hardy do you think they are? Because again, any fish can withstand gradual change. So it's not shocking that I'm asking about, but what's some of the lowest ranges and highest ranges you've seen seahorses be comfortable at?
So we primarily produce, and what most of our customers are keeping is Hippocampus erectus. That's a hardy species and what's commonly available in the trade. As far as those, we keep them at about 70 to 74 degrees Fahrenheit, and we really highly recommend keeping them that range. They can get quite a bit cooler, and if they get a little warmer a day here and there, it's usually not a big deal, but you get different bacteria such as Vibrio and things that they can be susceptible to that grow at higher rates at higher temperatures. So keeping it in that lower 70 to 74 degrees range is super important for long-term success and keeping them healthy.
Gotcha. So is there any particular species that can withstand cooler temperatures beyond that range? I know we have a lot of cold water marine fans. I know that seahorses are probably outside of the cold water marine environment, but is there a particular species that can stand a little cooler than most?
Potbelly seahorses, abdominalis is an Australian native species, and they're huge. They get to be about 12 inches, and those guys are a cold water species. Most people are keeping those at 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and some even cooler. And that's definitely one you really don't want to keep them above 65 degrees Fahrenheit. So that would be perfect for them. They're awesome. It's not a species we work with, but one I would like to.
That's a huge creature for sure. I did not expect to see a horse being that big.
Now, I want to go back real back. Earlier, Kapil said that they produce a lot of waste, and that surprised me, actually.
Me too. I figured they'd be more delicate and they wouldn't necessarily create a lot. But is it waste why they're dirty, or is it behavior?
It's mostly, I think, the waste is why they're kind of dirty. Is that they do poop a lot, and they produce pretty big turds. A lot of our seahorses in the farm, or all the seahorses in the farm, are kept bare bottom. So, and we do have them a little bit dense. So it's easier for us to sort of see the poop. And I've worked with a lot of different fish, and I would have to say they are probably one of the poopiest fish I've ever worked with.
That's incredible. What kind of a diet do you have these fish or these seahorses on that they are pooping like
They love
Clydesdales?
McRibs.
No shit. I will take a dozen seahorses right now. McRibs are wonderful.
No, but honestly, what do they feed on, and how often do you feed them?
So for all of our larger species, we do work with dwarf seahorses, and those are kind of a whole different creature in and of themselves. But for all the larger species of seahorses we work with, they're eating frozen mysis shrimp, and we're feeding them at least twice a day. At the farm, we're feeding them about 4 times a day, but what we recommend to other keepers is about twice a day once they're ready to ship out from here.
I heard that maybe this is species specific. I heard that a lot of seahorses require live food only. Just hearing that you're doing frozen makes it so much more attainable in my mind than like hatching brine shrimp or something else.
Yep, that's something we commonly hear. Being captive bred, we get them on a frozen mysis shrimp here from a really young age. A lot of that comes from what used to be available in the trade, which is primarily wild caught seahorses. And in general, they're more picky with eating, a little more stressed to being brought into captivity, and they're not going to take to prepared food as quickly as our captive bred seahorses are. Once they're ready to ship out from here, they've been on frozen mysis shrimp for at least 3 months. So they're used to it, and that's all they're getting here, and they do very well at that. It's also super nutritious.
And it's very high in protein, isn't it?
It is.
It's all protein. So they make the McRib out of.
What you got, Adam?
McMysis.
Is there a specific brand of mysis shrimp? Because I know different brands of frozen food have different like grades of mysis, like sizes and everything. Is there a specific brand that you guys feed yours?
We primarily feed 2 brands. We feed Piscine Energetics, Canadian mysis, and we also feed Hikari's. I think it's what their regular mysis shrimp. It is a little bit smaller.
Okay.
A lot of our brood stock gets the Piscine Energetics. It is fattier. It is bigger. So for those individuals that are producing a lot of eggs and babies, it's a good food for them. But all the young are pretty much raised on the Hikari foods. Those are the 2 brands we recommend, and partially, and there's probably other really good brands out there, but for us, they tend to be the cleanest and arrive the freshest out of most of the mysis that we sort of see. We do prefer buying them in flat packs versus cubes. The cubes tend to be kind of like cut up in pieces, and there's a lot of little pieces. So if you're kind of feeding cubes in like a more community tank, there's a lot of things in there that will eat the smaller pieces. But generally, those are the 2 brands that we feed. I know Hikari does have other types of mysis in there. They have, and we don't feed those other types. We just feed the small regular type.
Okay, you don't feed like the spirulina or anything like that.
If you want to like add, like once they get on mysis shrimp, they're exclusively on mysis shrimp. If you do want to give a little bit of just diversity, you could give them some brine shrimp that's enriched with spirulina or Pacific plankton, but generally mysis has all the nutrition that they need. Sometimes with our breeders, we do take live brine shrimp, and we do sell a food enrichment on our website. And so we'll enrich them for about 24 hours or so. And sometimes we'll give our breeders some of that, but we're basically taking like what reptile people do with crickets and kind of gut loading them and giving it. Just brine shrimp by itself isn't a very nutritious food.
So there's no people trying to do like a micro pellet or something that's intended for seahorses. I'm assuming that, again, like you said, mysis shrimp have their full balance, so using anything else would be risky, it sounds like.
The issue with having sort of like a pellet or a flake, at least with the pellet, is they have a very specialized sort of jaw, and I think it would be very difficult for them to go after that. I have had tanks in the past where I did have other fish in there, and I'd put some high quality marine flakes in there that were on mysis based. flake, and the seahorses looked interested, but they just ignored it. You know, they would look at it, and then they would kind of get close to it, and then they would just like swim away. Like this is a McRib sandwich knockoff, you know?
Yeah. There's nothing better than the original. So my introduction to seahorses many, many years ago, there used to be an ad like in the back of Outdoor magazine stuff, and they would sell dwarf seahorses from Coral Gables, Florida. And I don't know if that place is still open or not, but they would ship it to you through the mail. And my mom actually bought them for me, and I had very good luck. I kept them for a long time in a goddamn bowl. I mean, I didn't even have an aquarium. Yeah. You ordered the seahorses. It came with a plastic bowl, and you would take a little tiny cup and you would drop the water in just to kind of oxygenate the water. And I had very success. I kept them for a good long time.
You're kidding. How big was this bowl?
I would say it's probably a half-gallon tops.
And I'm assuming there's no heat on that.
No, it sat on the counter just like a fish bowl would, and that's how they sold them back then.
It's just fish bowl seahorses.
Right. And the big thing was, I think it was like $7.95, and they would send you a pregnant father seahorse and a female. I think you got a pair for $7.95 like that. And I actually did have little babies. And then you would just take and put the brine shrimp eggs on top of the water, and then they would hatch. And that's how I found them. That's how basic bare bones it was back in the day.
So I'm assuming you did water changes continually.
You know, it's salt water, so no, you didn't do a whole lot because you had no salt water. They didn't send you like extra salt packets at that time.
How in the world did this work?
It did.
They're dwarf seahorses, and they're hardier-ish.
They were apparently some super dwarf seahorses from another planet.
I mean, if you go online right now, you can type in dwarf seahorses, Coral Gables, Florida, and you'll see that ad. You know, you can go in the back of your Outdoor Life magazine, back of your Ranger Rick magazine.
Ranger Rick
was
this is like some 1950s shit right now that you're talking about.
Dude,
I still have Ranger Rick.
I'm going to just interject here that, and Alyssa's going to make fun of me for this. My first dwarf seahorses did come from Coral Gables.
Yeah.
And it was a while ago, but no comment other than that.
Yeah, suck it, Robs.
It was a hot minute.
No, I mean,
so those are listening. Do not put your seahorses in a jar, bowl, or any other thing.
It rocked. You know, but back in the day, I mean, that was your freaking entertainment because we didn't have Nintendos. All we had was payphone booths to play in and stuff like that.
And they
for
wonder
you young
why,
whippersnappers. But
they wonder why you set the cornfield on fire.
You know, you do what you do to have fun. I grew up in rural North Dakota, and there wasn't a pet store within 100 miles of us at the time.
So you kept dwarf seahorses in a jar.
I also very successfully had sea monkeys also.
Oh, did you?
I had sea monkeys, I had dwarf seahorses, and I did order those quail eggs that came with a little incubator, and I hatched quail eggs.
I really needed to hear more about your childhood.
Yeah, I grew up in North Dakota.
I want to know where the magnifying glass and the ants started coming in to play.
No, that's not me.
That's not you?
No.
Sounds like Rob's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a minute about the differences between a normal seahorse and a dwarf seahorse. Please explain that to me.
So the erectus seahorses are a larger species, but they're also native to Florida. They all come all the way up the coast, actually. Hippocampus zostre is the dwarf seahorses, which is what he kept in his bowl. We do work with those guys, too. They're smaller. We don't get them on any frozen food because they do kind of have a quick metabolism and they need to continuously eat. And you can't just leave frozen food in an aquarium all day. Just like seafood that you and I eat, it's going to spoil pretty quickly and foul up the water and possibly get them sick too. So we just feed them live enriched Artemia napuli, the baby brine shrimp sea monkeys, like he was saying. But yeah, they're just a smaller species. They only reach about an inch and a half in size. They're super cute.
Oh, that is tiny.
They're tiny.
Oh,
being so small, it's not a high bio load, and with the live food in there, it's not going to foul up the water too quickly or anything. So in low density, they can be fairly easy to keep. It's just the live food you have to hatch out, and that can be a little bit of work for some people.
I just want to put out there that we need to have a T-shirt made for the next round that bull shaming is okay.
Bull shaming is okay?
Yes, that's what we need.
I think we should get a T-shirt.
I mean, we do recommend putting a filtration in your dwarf seahorse
See,
egg.
Jimmy?
It will make the experience a lot better.
Oh, this was before
A lot of
electricity.
A lot of our customers like to use like small all-in-one aquariums. They may put a little screen on the intake or outtakes, but that's generally how people are keeping them now.
Sure. So
it just allows the live food to recirculate so they can eat all day long.
Another question that I have, since we're on the idea of filtration, is flow. I've always been told that seahorses have a particular need of slow flow, and if you have too much, it's going to kill them. If you don't have enough, they're not going to like it. Is this at all true? If so, what's the correct amount of flow?
So I'm going to quickly start this with a little bit of a story. When I got back into seahorses, I sent a picture or video of my tank to Alyssa. And she told me I needed to increase my flow. And I go, seahorses don't require flow. And then she sends me a video with water blasting and a 200-gallon aquarium full of these Hippocampus erectus seahorses. So seahorses are found in areas that do have high flow. A lot of times, in the past through the supply chain, they are kept in low flow. And some aquaculture facilities overseas do keep them in low flow. So you don't want to just blast your seahorses with a wave maker. But, it does help to slowly increase the speed of your wave maker and get the flow in there. With any aquarium, the flow sort of helps move waste and poop out of sort of dead zones or potential dead zones and get some more processed.
So what if you had the ability, right, if you're going to do this in a perfect environment, to control the flow on a schedule? For instance, nighttime, they have a little slower flow. In the daytime, it's a damn hurricane and they're holding on for dear life. Is that what kind of like... If you have a power head on there, you just want to keep it covered so that they don't grab onto it and get hurt. But they are smart animals, so you want to have direct flow so they learn where the higher flow area is, and they'll get caught off guard by it a couple times, then they won't do that again. But you do want to keep it consistent throughout the day, just so that they know where that high flow area is and they're not getting caught off guard. But they'll learn, and you just want to make sure you have areas that they can rest to that are not as fast moving. So having like flow schedules doesn't help. You just want to keep it consistent, make sure that you're hitting the dead spots, and then giving some slower flow areas so they can rest. That's what we recommend. I mean, if you're doing a big cleaning and you want to ramp up the flow and you're keeping an eye on them, that doesn't hurt, just to make sure things aren't settling in the aquarium. But in general, you want to keep it consistent. Do you need to keep decor or certain live things in the tank so they can grasp onto? Like what type of scenery are you looking at a tank for a seahorse? Because I'm assuming, again, they have the wonderful monkey-like tail. Do you keep certain decorations, especially farming them? You're not doing it to look good. You're doing them for raising and brooding seahorses. What do you recommend in a tank? There's a lot of different options. They are sit and wait predators, so you're right. They use their tail and they hold on and they need to rest and have plenty of things to hold on to. And what we call it is hitch. A lot of our customers have, soft corals in the aquarium, such as gorgonians, leather corals. Even some people use macroalgae. Did you just say hitch? And those are all natural hitching posts that you can keep them with. Other people just keep it simple and just use artificial corals. There's a lot that actually look pretty realistic these days that are nice. If you can get brighter colors, if they're artificial, which will promote better coloration with your seahorses, since they can change color, which isn't something we've talked about yet. But having nice bright colors in there will help color them up for everybody. I just love that to death. You actually said hitch up. This is the best thing. So do you ever dress up in a cowboy uniform for PR campaigns?
I've tried to get Alyssa to do that, but she refuses.
Hey, you could be the Marlboro man.
Put some chaps on.
Just saying, this goes both ways.
I'll just say...
I'm going to just say Alyssa's the better looking of us two, so I might scare customers away. Way to be a team player.
Well, don't wear the assless chaps. That's all I can say. From Coral Gables, Florida, you could pay an extra $1 and they'd send you a free hitching post. Oh, no! They charged $1. It would say something like, free hitching post $1 extra, something like that. But it was a little tiny. It looks like remember the westerns when you'd come up and you'd tie your horse to that little thing. In all the westerns, they'd have like a railing, and they'd wrap the reins around it and stuff. And they had kind of a little thing like that, made out of plastic. That was probably about 1.5 inches wide, and they would just kind of wrap their tail around the fence.
Wow!
But it was an extra $1.
Wow!
But
one thing too with some of the artificial decor is you want to be careful. Like I wouldn't use like a fake kabamba plant. It tends to trap detritus and food and just become sort of like a cesspool of stuff in a seahorse tank. You know, things that are sort of smooth surfaces. Another thing that people will use is yellow plastic chain link.
That's pretty much what we use here. It's just plastic yellow chain that's from Lowe's or Home Depot, and we just anchor it down with coral frag plugs, or some of our customers will just kind of like tuck it under the live rock or weigh it down with PVC, but that works out well too, and it's cheap.
And that floats naturally, doesn't it?
It does, yep.
You said live rock. When I was keeping seahorses, they advised no live rock. So, well, that was when we also got live rock that had actual live critters in it. That was really cool. But
Well, that also because there's octopus and bobbit worms and
Bobbit worms.
yeah.
Remember Lorena Bobbit worm?
no.
Okay, we'll talk about that
I
later.
Googled it after you told me about that, by the way.
Yeah.
And go fluke yourself.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing.
Cringe does not explain that meme.
I just want to say that when I was down in Tampa, Florida, about 10 years ago, my salesperson, Julie, took us to a area and we went snorkeling where there is live dwarf seahorses, you know, amongst the plants, I guess. And they were in a lot of current, actually. It was right by the mouth of a river, so it was almost brackish. And they were in there and by the hundreds. And it was very, very fascinating. And I actually wasn't paying attention. I was looking at all these different seahorses, and I actually kind of got pushed out away from where we were at by about 30, 40 feet. And all of a sudden, I'm like, holy crap, where did everybody go? But it was a lot. There was a whole lot of current going through there. And that was just by the Gibsonton, Tampa area. And it's very cool if you can find them out in the wild natural habitat.
So 2 notes, right? One, I'm just imagining you sitting there like, man, I wish I had a jar right now. And 2,
who says I didn't have a jar?
After you paddled back in, when was the coronary?
No.
Did you feel like you ate 4 McRibs after that paddle?
No, there was no coronary, but there's a little kid on the side of the beach going, look, manatees.
Nah, you don't eat lettuce.
That is correct. I do not eat lettuce. So I crawled out of the water and I punched him.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Throat punch?
Yeah.
I mean,
he was 7 years old. He had it coming.
Is there anything else? All right. As far as seahorses delicacy, like what do you have to worry about as far as like things in the tank? Like for instance, with loaches in freshwater environment, we can't use copper. We can't treat for things like ick with traditional means. We have to use stuff like UV filters. Is there any abnormal susceptibility to certain seahorses?
They're not too
Other than
sensitive
pennies.
to like specific medications. In most aquariums that people are keeping them in, though, if you did need to use a medication, we would recommend moving them to a hospital tank and using that there rather than the display tank. The biggest thing is you just want to avoid stinging corals such as like Euphilia or Galexia, ones that have a very strong sting or very big LPS that could possibly eat them. They are slow moving and they can get stung unlike other fish. As well as just being careful with what other tank mates you keep them with. You just want to keep them with small, peaceful fish such as gobies. You don't want to keep them with, big yellow tangs or angelfish or things that could outcompete them for food or stress them or possibly pick at them. Because they are slow moving and you want to make sure they're getting plenty to eat and not competing with the other tank mates. You really want to make sure that the aquarium is a seahorse aquarium and the inhabitants in there are safe to keep with them and peaceful. So you wouldn't want to put them in a mixed reef tank.
But nothing that they're like, oh, you can't use this because they'll turn purple and die. Other than pennies.
One of the medications that we do like to use at the farm is formalin. And that seems to be something that treats a lot of the common issues that seahorses tend to get. So that's what we do. We don't really use copper on seahorses. I've used it in the past a couple of times, and one time I did lose a seahorse. But formalin is usually something that sort of treats some of the same stuff copper will, but it's a lot friendlier for the seahorses.
So
they're not like a lot of other marine fish either, where you see a lot of like, ick. They don't really. It's not that they can't get ick, but it's not common with them. So it's not really something you see pop up with them too much.
We don't prefer to use antibiotics with seahorses. I've seen it done successfully, but in a lot of the cases that we've had in the past, it seems to be better to just remove the seahorse out of the environment and put it in a hospital tank, and that seems to be a really big help for it. Also, water quality is probably the most important preventative thing. If you can keep good water quality, weekly water changes, that will prevent a lot of bacterial and even protozoan things from affecting your seahorses. Keeping that water clean is probably one of the biggest things I can really recommend anybody keeping seahorses.
Sure. So we actually have a segue here. One of our listeners that's listening live in the podcast right now messaged, how do you get rid of bacterial infection in seahorses? Also, greetings from Coldwater Fish Group on Facebook. So any other specific recommendations for bacterial?
I mean, most seahorses, if they're healthy, I wouldn't recommend just treating them. If you think that they have a bacterial infection, most of the time, Furon 2, which is nitrofurazone, is what will most commonly help with most related bacterial infections with seahorses. But of course, we would recommend doing that in a hospital tank. We just simply follow the manufacturer's instructions as far as dosage. And it usually takes up to 10 days, but you want to complete the 10 days as well as keep them in the antibiotics for at least 14 days if you're still seeing an issue. If it's still not cleared up after then, you'd probably want to switch to a different antibiotic.
Now, this may sound really strange. So your antibiotic doesn't go well and your seahorse passes away. You can take the dead seahorse and lay it out flat on a piece of paper and dry it out.
No, Jimmy.
No, listen to me. I was down in Florida, and I went to a place that sold seashells, and they had some very big, large, beautiful seahorses. And I went, that's really cool. She goes, yeah, that's natural. They dry out like that. They put some sort of like a fingernail polish type material on top of them stuff, and they become somebody's wall hanging. Have you ever heard of this?
Okay, Jimmy, you talk with them. I'm going to grab you something. I'll be right back.
All right.
You continue the podcast.
I will do that. But have you guys heard of that?
He just abandoned ship.
Oh, he's going to go find
We've seen it around. You can, like, a lot of even your freshwater fish and marine fish, you can always dry them up if you're in a ventilated or and hot environment.
Some of our customers will do that after they pass, just to keep them rather than burying them. Or,
I mean, we usually do not do that here. So
yeah, but it just thoroughly amazed me that people are actually hanging dead seahorses on their wall as decoration and don't even realize when they're buying them that they're actually dead seahorses.
So, Jimmy, just to let you know, you explain the situation, right?
Yeah.
I cleaned up one of my aquariums and sold it, right? Because I was leaking. They're going to reseal it, the whole thing. And in the back, I saw...
Dead guppy?
No. This is my Free Willy Placo that I have right here. He's dried up like a chip.
Oh, my God.
And he looks like one of those dead seahorses.
He does.
I didn't even know where he went. I just lost him. It was an albino bristlenose Placo. And let me tell you, it is a perfectly maintained skeleton like the seahorse.
Yes.
So I now, as you're telling me, need to hang this on my wall with, in honor of what they do with seahorses. So we're going to name it Clarence, and it's going to be on the podcast table now staring at you for that horrible instruction to our listeners.
I think we should sell these, and you just add water, and then they, like, instant sea monkeys.
Make a moldy petri dish.
Yeah,
sadist.
This is wonderful. I hope everybody's watching how Rob has killed his Pleco. But yeah, I just thought it was very interesting that people had done that.
It jumped out. What can you do?
Free Willy.
Also, cool thing is, Bristlenose plecos have that. It's almost like a mace on the side of their gills, right? You don't really notice it until they dry up. You can just see the incredible spike work on the sides of their cheeks.
You wait till I die, and you'll see how great my hair is. Actually, how
it's just it's going to be a skeleton with just your hair.
Just prop me up in the corner when I'm dead, and it would make a great conversation piece.
I'll curl up your tail. We'll put you on a wall.
There you go. Might get a big nail though. I'm pretty fat.
This is horrible. Oh boy, where do we go from here? So. Let's get away from dead seahorses.
Let's talk about breeding seahorses.
Yes, let's go to something fun. So breeding seahorses, by far, if you've never done seahorses, has to be the most confusing thing, right? We've seen that a lot of in the fish kingdom. The males take care of the babies, but please explain to us how you go through the process and how it's like one of the funnest things that the aquarium community has to offer is breeding seahorses.
Seahorses, with the breeding tank, I've seen them breed in about anything, and even tanks smaller than we sort of recommend. They are seasonal breeders. They seem to breed around the spring and summer a little bit more, usually spring, but they will breed throughout the year. They one common misconception is that they mate for life. I will say that is not true at all.
Definitely not in captivity.
I don't believe.
I don't think it probably is for their natural environment either. But that's one thing that everybody always thinks, that they mate for life, and they definitely don't here. And I think that it's probably unlikely that they do in their natural environment as well.
Get it where you can.
Pretty much.
But you will, we do keep our breeding seahorses in groups here. They are a social creature. I think, keeping cichlids, they're really fun to watch in groups. The males do show off to each other and show off to the females. Usually they do this little dance and they go up and down. And
oh my! Hold on, we need to warn our listeners.
Make a little love, get down tonight.
Viewer discretion advised.
And the male will transfer the eggs, the female will transfer the eggs into the male's pouch. And that's how you sex them. There's a noticeable pouch, kind of like a kangaroo on a male seahorse. And the female transfer the eggs into that pouch. The male will fertilize them when they're in the pouch, and the eggs eventually actually implant in the male's pouch and develop.
The true male pregnancy. That's why they're the best animals in the world.
Clearly.
Bite me.
I think they signed a deal with the devil and got screwed, honestly.
I agree with Kapil.
They, depending on the species, but on average, I would say it's around 18 days.
For the erectus, most of the time they carry the fry for about 17 to 21 days. It's a little bit temperature dependent as well as individually dependent.
Well, like all fish.
A subpopulation of erectus that's from the more northern regions, and those seem to have less time before the pregnancy, but 18 to about 21 days.
They should see a doctor. If you're erectus for 18 days, people, see a doctor.
I think it's 4 hours is the limit.
Oh, 4 hours. Yeah, definitely. If it's 18 days, you want to get that fixed.
No comment.
There we go. Come on, Kapil. I was on Team Kapil for a while, but now I'm off.
We only have functional erectus in this farm.
Wonderful. So how many do you get out of a batch?
Okay, so take it that the whole dance goes well. Sometimes
tea time.
Sometimes the female will Sorry.
I gotta know what this dance, right? I picked on Adam for this.
We've seen this on TikTok, right?
He calls it the happy dance, and I'm feeling like there's not an actual name for this. Is it just like some ritual, or are we literally like? Is it common to call it the happy dance?
I've never referred to it as the happy dance, but usually in scientific literature, it's called courting behavior or mating behavior.
I had to use small words for Rob.
Thank you.
Adam knows a lot about mating behavior, don't you there, father of four?
Anyways,
yeah.
Let's continue. How many do you get in a batch?
It all depends. You can get anywhere from like 10 babies to, I think, what was it, 1,000 was your highest batch, I think?
1,000?
We've had some pretty big batches.
Crap.
Our largest batch is close to 2,000.
For real. That is freaking phenomenal.
That's a lot of mouths to feed.
How's the mortality rate? Did most of them live?
It depends. I mean, every batch is a little different. We definitely try to shoot for over 90% survival rates. I would say most of the time we're pretty close to that.
So the particular
some batches are weaker than others, and you don't always have that high success rates. But if the brood stock's well conditioned, we can have pretty high success rates with them.
Say this particular pair that laid 1,000 babies. Do they breed more than once a year?
Oh yes, they can. They breed the day they give birth. They usually breed again within a day.
Now you know why they have multiple buildings.
Some of them will breed all year long and produce one batch. Some will produce 3 or 4 batches and then take a break. It varies.
We even have some that just don't produce and are freeloaders.
Yeah, we have quite a few of those.
Have you so when you said you keep them in groups and then they pick the groups, they don't mate for life in captivity like this. Have you tried mixing them around like parrots? I know with parrot breeding, you have to put multiple males and multiple females and they pick their own mate. Have you tried that with the seahorses to see if you could get the freeloaders to pick a new mate and see if they want to hook up with somebody else? Or is this when you put them in a group in a tank, you just literally keep them in that group in that tank? There's no transfer.
It depends. I mean, we try and keep the group together just mostly for biosecurity reasons. But if we do have some that are being a little picky, we will move them. We also just move them to a different tank pretty much quarterly. That way we can bleach out the system that they're in and put them in a fresh new system just to keep biofilms and that kind of stuff out of our plumbing and whatnot. So usually once we move them, it does kind of like, we'll get some pairs to change it up, and maybe some pairs that weren't breeding before, it might get them going. They're one of those things that's just sometimes like we'll try and figure everything out and they can be a little bit unpredictable with their behavior. And I think that's just probably true for a lot of different fish, but especially the seahorses.
I mean, sometimes we'll add a couple males to the group, and that gets the old fart males,
Yeah, that usually gets them feisty.
And there's some action that goes on after that.
So you bring in some competition, and they have a dance-off.
Pretty much.
This is just like Footloose, man.
I feel like there needs to be a Kevin Bacon version of a seahorse.
There should be.
I mean, that would fly off the shelves, clearly.
Exactly.
Also, we have a question, and I don't want this answered because I giggled in the middle from one of the listeners. They asked, where can I find an erectus in the southern regions? So we're not answering that, and we're going to move on.
That was from a listener?
Yes,
Florida.
Florida. Okay, there you go.
They do have the best strip clubs.
Perfect. Okay.
And one other question about this. Have you tried taking water from a really good breeding tank and dumping it into the other one, or that's biosecurity reasons for that too?
That's
works
a good
for
question. We have had some of our erectus seahorses when they give birth, and it kind of tends to make everybody else in the same system go a little crazy with courting and everything. So there's definitely something to that. I have tried that where, 2 systems that I'm comfortable with mixing the water with, and it does kind of get them courting more and showing more behavior and everything. I wouldn't say it's like 100%, but I do think there is something to that.
Do you feel like they release hormones and that gets everybody else excited?
I think so. I do.
I know
the female, while the male's pregnant, is working on ripening the next clutch of eggs, and pretty much as soon as he gives birth, that clutch of eggs is ready. So I don't know if there's something where he's letting her know cue-wise that he's ready and whatnot. So I think they do probably put something off when they give birth, but I don't know that that's studied, and I'm not sure what it would be.
Yeah, it is with angelfish. I used to breed a lot of angelfish, and that definitely is true. You get one pair going, and it gets everybody excited because of the hormones in the water and whatnot.
Definitely.
What is the gestation period? How long do they carry the eggs?
About 18 to 21 days.
Oh, it is? Okay. I just thought I heard it wrong.
It varies for species too, but as far as the erectus seahorses that we work with, primarily it's about 18 to 21 days.
So one thing I'd like to bring up, and is probably the biggest misconception of seahorses, and if Alyssa ever goes bald, it might be because of this misconception, is seahorse color is not fixed. Similar to chameleons, they can change colors. And they can change colors also when they're unhappy, but usually basically towards their backgrounds. I've had some seahorses, a different color all the time, and I have some seahorses that seem to like certain colors. Colors like red and orange are not really that common, and particularly are not that common in captive bred seahorses. And I think it might be something with some of the diet that they have in the wild. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. We usually, when people order seahorses from us, they'll ask, "Can you get me the yellow ones?" All the seahorses can turn yellow. We can send you a yellow seahorse, and it can arrive yellow to you. Sometimes we can send you a yellow seahorse, and it can arrive black, or gray, or variety of different sort of colors and patterns. A lot of the Erectus seahorses that we work with, and as well as many species, have these stripes along their back that are usually white, and the sort of the layman's term for those stripes are called saddles. And so the saddling is fixed. That doesn't change. Some seahorses have, crazy saddling patterns. Another thing that happens with seahorses, they'll get these suri, which are these like sort of seaweed-like appendages. And that's not even a fix. Like we'll have them show up in some of our tanks, and you can actually request ones with suri on your order. But I can't guarantee you that those appendages are going to stay. You will see seahorses develop them later on, or lose them. So that's a really interesting thing. With the seahorses, and even like chameleons, they can kind of rotate their eyes and kind of look around.
They're sea chameleons. That's what I described.
They have a prehensile tail. They're pretty much the chameleon of the sea.
I see on here a lot of different color patterns and varieties. Some of them almost look like they have almost like how do you put that, like crusts on them, or is that just coloration, or is that like some part of like a growth on older seahorses?
That's the saddling markings that you're seeing, and it does develop more as they age. Usually, for most individuals, some have a lot of it, some don't have very much of it at all. But it's just a natural marking on them.
And how long can you expect your seahorse to live? What's the average lifespan?
With proper care, most of the larger species will live about 4 to 7 years. We've had some hobbyists report them living over 12 years, so they can live quite a while.
That's incredible.
So what's some of the prices to get in this hobby? What's your average price? Because again, you sell seahorses on seahorssavvy.com. So what does your price ranges go for seahorses?
I think sort of single seahorses start around like $99, and if you buy a pair, the price goes down. You buy 4, the price goes down even more. So the seahorses that we tend to have in stock are Hippocampus erectus. They are probably the most productive seahorses in captivity, and they are very hardy, and they seem to do really well. In a lot of other countries, they're not as available as they are in the U.S., and we work with 2 different subpopulations. We work with sort of what we call the saddled erectus, which is the sort of the southern subpopulation that occurs in the Florida Keys and the Gulf of Mexico. They have the ability to get larger. They are a little bit slower growing. And then the northern subpopulation, which we call the northern erectus, they tend to be a little bit smaller. Their morphology is a little bit more stout. They are probably the most active seahorses. In our personal seahorse reef, that's what we have displayed. We really just like that species. They are also a lot easier to breed than the southerns are, even though the southerns are pretty easy to breed. They will go through all the different sort of color patterns as you'll see the southerns go with. But they're just a cool seahorse. They're just always very active. They're always moving. They're always flirting with each other, showing off. And that's probably becoming our most popular seahorse that we're selling. We do sometimes sell hippocampus combs, or what they call the tiger tail seahorse, which is a species that's native to Vietnam, the Philippines, and that sort of area of the Indo-Pacific. They are a lot slower growing of a species. They do have some really wild color changes, but they're not, in terms of production, we don't get huge numbers of those, so we don't always have those available, and I don't think we currently have them available. And then the other seahorse that we do sell are hippocampus reedi, and we sell the Brazilian subpopulation of those, and that's probably one of the more sought after seahorses.
That's what everybody wants right now. Nobody has them available.
Yeah, and they are a little bit colorful, but they are really weird about breeding. They'll either just start breeding and then they'll just stop. So we don't always have those available, and that's probably the more expensive seahorse that we sell. We also do sell hybrids between the erectus and the reedi.
I did not know you could do that.
Flower horn seahorses, but the one interesting thing about hybrids, there was a study done in Florida where they did look at the erectus populations and the reedi population. So they do overlap in populations. And they did notice that in some parts of their range, there was some level of hybridization going on, and that the erectus naturally had some reedi genes in them. One thing about the hybrid seahorse, if you breed two hybrids together, we don't know of anybody that has produced any viable offspring with those. But if you take a hybrid and you breed it to the parent species, we've heard of people having success with getting viable offspring from. So that's another sort of cool species. And then we're trying to work with hippocampus cuda, but we haven't been. That we're still growing those guys out. So that's hopefully another species that used to be a lot more common in the market that we would like to sort of bring back. And then we do work with the dwarf seahorse, which are the hippocampus astrae, and those are the ones that you keep in your pico or nano tanks.
Now, how often do you guys bring in new stock to? Do you do it a couple times a year, or do you do it continuously as you find it available? Because I know some of the stuff is very hard to find.
The erectus, we pretty much bring in a new group of those every year, which is kind of what's worked out well for us and our pattern of rotating and everything like that. As far as other species, it's kind of just what's available. Being that they're CITES Appendix 2, there's just not a whole lot of imports, especially this year. So it's just pretty much what's available. If we see something unique that we think would be a good fit to our breeding program and they're a different species other than erectus, we'll usually, grab it when they're available because you don't see them available too often. But we're pretty careful with what we're bringing in and where we're bringing it in from.
Do you have like a quarantine area for these?
We do. We definitely, they're in quarantine for at least 6 months before they enter our breeding program. They're dewormed, and we use the formalin on them, which takes care of a lot of possible external parasites and whatnot. And even if they're not having an issue, we'll go ahead and do that. I don't use antibiotics on them unless there's a bacterial problem, but usually if we need to use antibiotics on something, they're probably not going to end up being breeding stock for us.
So another question would be, if I'm trying to get set up seahorses for the first time, is it best to keep just a pair together? Or you said they're very social. Can I just have one and have a happy seahorse? Is it like some like gourami species seem to be okay with even just one in a tank?
We usually recommend that you have at least 2 individuals because they do kind of feed off of each other as far as confidence and everything, and they can be a little lonely if you just have one and shy. Usually if you have 2, they'll kind of, feed off of each other's behavior and become more active and confident and more bold in the aquarium. And like we said, they are very social, so we recommend having a buddy for them.
Do you ever have any that are aggressive to the point where they hurt other seahorses?
That's a good question. Some of the males can kind of chase each other around when they're feeling frisky and displaying and everything, especially around a full moon. We'll see them get quite feisty around I can always tell it's a full moon just by seeing that behavior with them where they're actually snicking at each other and chasing each other around. But I mean, they're peaceful fish. They're not aggressive or anything. They're not going to hurt each other. It can be kind of alarming when you see that behavior, but we've never had them hurt each other or anything like that. It's not something we worry about.
Now, another question, or earlier you talked about tank mates, and I know I've heard of people like keep pipefish as a tank mate. What do you suggest to keep in your seahorse tank?
You can keep pipefish with them. They are a good tank mate for them. You do want to be careful with what pipefish you keep with them because they're so closely related to seahorses, and a lot of those are going to be wild imports that could possibly carry things that the seahorses could be more susceptible to being so closely related. We do have captive bred pipefish, and then we also bring in some wild pipefish that we quarantine here like we would our seahorse brood stock and eventually offer for sale. But as far as other tank mates besides pipefish, different gobies, pretty much any of the small gobies that are, under 2.5, 3 inches are fine to keep with them. Cardinal fish. A lot of our customers keep like the pajama cardinal fish with them. And what else, Kapil?
We do recommend some of the smaller fairy wrasses, leopard wrasses.
Really?
Pretty well with them, especially since they do like some of the same. Yeah.
Yep.
With angelfish and with larger angels, we would avoid, but some are like the really small dwarf angels, so like the cherub or the Atlantic pygmy angels. That's probably the most popular one that we sell to keep with them. Clownfish. The one thing you got to be careful with clownfish is sometimes they can mature, and this is an issue with clownfish in any tank, whether it's seahorses or not. Sometimes a pair can start mating and sort of become aggressive around their territory, but clownfish are something that are kept. Royal grommas. What else do we sell?
Mandarin gobies?
Mandarins. That's probably the most popular tank mate that we do sell for them. They do pretty well. The dragonettes, the scooter dragonettes, which is one of their cousins, does really well. Invert wise, smaller crab like emerald crabs. A lot of people have a misconception. Crabs are aggressive, and some crabs are aggressive, but like emerald crabs. Why am I not remembering the name of the
ruby red crabs?
The ruby red crabs and porcelain crabs. We reckon hermit crab wise, we like blue-legged hermit crabs. If you get small blue-legged hermit crabs, sometimes your larger seahorses can eat them. I call that enrichment. We sell scarlet hermit crabs, but we have a polka dot hermit crab that works really well with them. You want to stay away from large predatory hermit crabs or any crabs. Starfish wise, we have these orange spiny starfish. They're probably the coolest starfish. I'm a fish person, but really good for the most part. But that's the Cryptasia eater.
We're losing you.
Say that again.
I was saying we're losing you. You're cutting out real bad.
Sorry. Where did I cut out last?
I couldn't tell you. There's I think the last 4 species that you said. rather than that, it sounds like there's a whole list. And I do see a list here on your website, again, seahorse-savvy.com, and it looks like that you guys even have a wonderfully diverse list of seahorse-safe fish that people can look through. I certainly recommend that because there's a ton of species apparently that can go with seahorse, which, again, another misconception I had. Is there any type of shrimp that you would worry about with fish? Because, again, I'm trying to think of everything in a saltwater community tank that might be bad for them.
Most shrimp species that you can keep in a community aquarium are fine with seahorses. If you wouldn't keep it in a standard marine community aquarium, I probably would hold off on it. One thing to be worried about is if the shrimp is really small, like sexy shrimp or some of the small anemone shrimps, they could potentially be food for the seahorse.
Just that they'll just eat them right out. What about some of the other bigger shrimp? Is it just because they're potentially aggressive, or what's the concern?
Usually it's bigger. Sometimes with like smaller peppermint shrimp. Sometimes some of the larger seahorses may go after them, but generally if you're going to add shrimp to your tank, we recommend just sort of taking it down and placing it by the rock, and usually they seem to be fine.
So what have we missed tonight in our questions of seahorses? What facts should we know? And is this a species of fish that people should be going after as a beginner, or is this a lot of risk and work?
So one piece of evidence with tank mates that I would like to bring up is mixing species of seahorses. It's really important to keep seahorses sort of species specific. The Hippocampus erectus and the red-eye seahorses are species that overlap and they seem to do fine together, but we wouldn't recommend mixing any other species of seahorses. One or both species of seahorses seem to go downhill very quickly after mixing them. One theory is that there's just different sort of gut fauna, and once that transfers to each other, they don't do so well. But seahorses as a beginner fish in the marine aquarium, a good chunk of our customers start out with seahorses as the first marine fish that they, and most of our customers are very successful at keeping seahorses.
Wonderful. So you do recommend it. It's not that just your customers get them as your first one, but you also recommend doing that.
Yep. As long as they do their research and they understand, the basics of keeping a saltwater aquarium, it can definitely be their first aquarium and they can be successful. A lot of times we find them to even be very successful because they research specifically what seahorses need and they don't have other reef tank experience. So they just research exactly what the seahorses need. And there's not other things that are a little different with reef tanks that, get hung up in confusion, such as like the temperature is a big one. A lot of people that keep reef tanks are used to the warmer temperatures, and that doesn't always transfer to the when they try seahorses.
Is there any particular type of lighting that you have to have? I mean, are they best kept a little bit on the dim side, or would you rather just have them lit up like any other aquarium?
You can have it lit up like any other aquarium. If you're not going to have live coral in there, I would probably just keep lower lighting just to help keep algae down, and you don't necessarily need the brighter light or anything. But they can take, normal reef tank lighting. If you have super high light, like metal halide, sometimes they can actually get like sort of like a suntan where they'll darken up. But that's not always true. It's based on a lot of different things as far as what color they display. But if your seahorses are super dark and you have really, really bright light, that's something you could try adjusting.
And metal headlights.
Have a more wider spectrum, like I was saying, if you have a more wider light spectrum, that can help enhance the seahorse's color versus having a very blue looking tank.
So no black lights.
No disco lights.
No black lights.
We're not as funny as we thought.
We have quite a bit of delay on our end, but Adam, do you have any questions for these two?
You said that the saddles stay there permanently. Is this a good way of like identification, and that's how you can keep track of like? Because I know you were saying you had some freeloaders. You just kind of go, oh, that one didn't do anything again this week. You can go to the other tank. Do you keep like
pretty much? Their saddling and their size. That's kind of how we identify the individuals. Definitely.
Have you been able to, with your captive breeding, pull out the ones that have like, say you were saying there was some that have 1,000 up to 1,000 babies and they have a really good mortality rate? Do you save some of the babies from that to try to breed that line, or do you just kind of mix and match right now for genetics?
We use both wild breeding stock and then F1, which is, the first generation. We don't really go much further than that because we want to keep up our genetic diversity and whatnot. But we do selective breed, and we'll pull ones that have, desirable traits such as growing fast, ones that are, more active. Of course, everybody likes the way they look. So some that are more, individually unique as far as their saddling or markings. And there's a lot of different, favorable traits with them that we'll select for.
Gotcha. And then have you ever been able to get leafy sea dragons or any of that in that family?
We were working with weedy sea dragons. We're not currently working with them. We did see some different courting behavior with them and everything. They're a lot of fun while we were working with them at the farm. We were not successful with breeding them, but they were definitely, close. There's not very many places that are working with those guys. There's a couple public institutions that have been successful with breeding them. I don't think in any very large numbers, but they're awesome.
Yes, they are. Those were good questions. Those were good answers. Thank you.
I'd asked earlier to Adam and stuff, and I don't know if you guys heard, but I know like with kangaroos and stuff, there are other mammals that also do the pouch thing. Is there anything else in the marine world that does the pouch thing?
Some pipefish, the males also carry the fry. They don't really have like a true pouch as far as I know with most species like the seahorses do. A lot of them will just actually like carry the eggs externally on the underside, but there are some species that kind of have like a pouch. Aside from those, I don't, other than like mouth brooders, but that's not like a pouch.
No.
I can't think of anything else. I think it's pretty much just seahorse specific.
Even the sea dragons carry their eggs on the back of their tails.
So they're very, very unique in what they do. And do you think it's just because...
Definitely.
Do you think it's just because the females are so damn lazy? Is that why this is happening? I mean, I'm just wondering.
Well, thanks for our 3% of female listeners.
I was just trying to offend everybody. It is Christmas. And she's got no answer for me.
There's a delay in the
They're
line.
considered the most evolutionarily survived species. So the male will carry the fry while the female, or carry the eggs while the fry are developing, and then he gives birth. And meanwhile, the female can produce the eggs and get those ready, which are energetically costly. So the male does the work while she's producing more eggs, and it works out really well energy-wise for them to optimize how many fry they're producing.
So a very efficient
as a species.
Very efficient. Humans should do that.
They're efficient. They know what's up. They know what's going on. I agree.
I disagree.
Well, if you, the other listening, are interested in getting yourself into seahorses, certainly go to seahorssavvy.com and you'll find yourself a wide variety of seahorses. Now, you did warn us to let the public know that you guys are now on vacation. Their last order shipped for Christmas, and you will not be shipping until the start of the next year. But certainly get your orders in ready for the beginning of the year. Seahorssavvy.com. Alyssa,
I've got one other quick question. We've got a lot of UK listeners, a lot of people from outside the country. Do you guys ship internationally by chance?
We do not ship internationally. We ship anywhere in continental U.S., and we ship to Alaska and Hawaii. But we do not export at this time, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I know we'll get that question asked after the podcast, and so I thought I'd throw it out there for everybody. So just to eliminate.
No, definitely, it's one that comes up.
Comes up quite often.
There's also a bunch of different articles on the website too, which go over a lot of the stuff we talked about tonight in greater detail. So I definitely recommend checking those out as well.
Well, wonderful. Again, seahorssavvy.com. Check them out. Alyssa Kapil, it's been fantastic having you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having us. It's been fun.
Well, perfect, guys. If you like what you hear, go to aquariumguyspodcast.com. On the bottom of the website, you'll find the link to give us a couple bucks, help support the podcast, get the lights on. Support our sponsors like Joe's Shrimp Shack, and support SavvySeahorses.com because they took time out of their day for us as well. But even some merch. Again, thanks so much, and we will see you on the next podcast. Thanks, guys, for listening to the podcast. Please go to your favorite place where podcasts are found, whether it be Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever they can be found. Like, subscribe, and make sure you get push notifications directly to your phone so you don't miss great content like this.
So they had murdered my shrimp and then had a fest over the dead corpses of my shrimp.
Maybe that's why.
And
maybe the slaughter and not eating the slaughter of shrimp just got them in the mood.
Well, I think there's something to that. So if you're trying to breed gudgeons for profit, just take them to your friend's house, put them in their shrimp tank,
feed them about $100 worth of shrimp, and sell the gudgeons for $2 a piece.
Don't bring them to Bentley's house.
Yeah.